Welcome to Sensible Health Solutions, the show where we simplify health and wellness. Join your hosts, Hallie Fields and Dr. Scott Luper, as they share practical tips and expert insight to help you navigate common ailments, nutrition, and overall well-being. Tune in for straightforward advice that empowers you to live a healthier life.
Welcome back to Sensible Health Solutions. My name is Hallie Fields and I'm your host. With me is Dr. Scott Luper, and today we are continuing our conversation on fatigue. Hello, Dr. Luper. How are you?
Hi, Hallie. I'm doing great.
Good. Well, in continuing our conversation on fatigue, I thought it might be important to talk about thyroid and how that might be affecting somebody's energy levels.
Yeah, we were doing a series of these episodes on fatigue because fatigue is something that we see a lot of in our practice. And it's not caused by one thing, it's caused by lots of things. And we went over a short list of kind of the more common causes of fatigue, one of those being thyroid. There's the other ones are people who have problems with their adrenal glands, people who are got some kind of hidden infection, stuff like that. We'll hit those other shows later. But I agree, today let's talk about thyroid.
Wonderful. So how common is it for you to see thyroid issues in your practice?
Very common.
Okay.
My last patient I saw today was thyroid.
Okay.
Was it the only one today? There might have been two. No, take it back. There were two. There were two today.
Okay. And so what might be the key indications when somebody comes into the clinic that you think it might be their thyroid affecting them?
So if somebody's coming in and they haven't been diagnosed already, so a lot of times people already know they have a thyroid problem. But if they're coming in, the symptoms that get me thinking about that if they have a thyroid problem is the fact, number one, they're tired. Number two, they're slow. There's a certain slowness to their system. For example, they tend to be constipated. They tend to be slow to speak. They tend to be cold. They tend to be thick in weird areas like around their ankles. Their skin gets thicker. And they lose the last third of their eyebrows.
Oh,
isn't that interesting?
Yeah. What about eyelashes? Any effect on eyelashes?
Not that I've noticed. Eyebrows you lost, but not eyelashes.
Huh.
There's more symptoms too, but those are the ones that show. Those are the ones that show when you start talking to them.
And you said that they run cold, so temperature of 97.4 or under?
Yeah, just 98.6 is normal. Mm-hmm. So lots of people run about a degree low, and in fact, thyroid patients often run a degree low, or 2 or 3 degrees low.
Okay.
So let me speak to that a little bit. It turns out that temperature is the best way, the most accurate way to tell if somebody's having a thyroid problem, because your thyroid sets your metabolic rate, and metabolic rate affects your temperature. So if there's some kind of breakdown in the system, it's going to show up as low temperature. So one of the things that I have people do is to take their temperature several times at home so that we can get an accurate temperature. Back in the day when I was a young doctor, the standard at that time was to take a temperature first thing in the morning before you got out of bed. But the fact of the matter is that's not very accurate. Any one temperature is suspect. It's better to just take a whole bunch of them and then add them together and divide by how many temperatures you took, and then you'll get an average temperature. That's much better. Also, it's nice to see people in the middle of their day doing stuff to get a sense of what activity does to them, or whether it makes them warmer or colder. We can't say necessarily. Mm-hmm. But if there's a problem with thyroid, and they're running slow, not high thyroid, but low thyroid, it'll show up in their temperature. Now, there's blood tests for this as well, and the blood tests are super helpful, and I run the blood tests frequently, but the blood tests will go up and down for other reasons in kind of weird ways. They don't always follow the right pattern. There's what you learn in medical school, and then there's what is in reality, and they don't correlate to each other. So I'm always looking for what's real, and the temperature is what's real, and how people feel is what's real. And even though the lab tests might be perfectly normal, and then they feel tired and their temperature's low, I know they have a problem. Mm-hmm. In fact, this is an understood thing. They call it subclinical hypothyroidism, and it's real. And if you treat it, people get better. Their energy comes up. Now, not everybody has that. Most people who have low thyroid, when you do the lab tests, lab tests come out they'll show whatever the problem is. So I know it's only a half-hour show. I don't necessarily want to go in too much into shop talk about these labs.
Right.
But we should at least talk about what labs I'm talking about.
Yeah, maybe. Just mention them.
Okay. Let me do just a little bit more than mention them. So, because a lot of times people have this problem and they're going to want to know a little bit more. So we'll do a little deeper dive on this one. The number one test to test for thyroid, particularly low thyroid, is known as a thyroid stimulating hormone, a TSH. And the TSH is the most accurate when it comes to measuring what the thyroid's doing. Because if the thyroid's running low, then the TSH runs high. I always imagine TSH is like that guy sits on the wagon in the Old West days with the big whip and goes, yeah, right? Yeah! That's what TSH
It moves
does.
the thyroid.
It stimulates the thyroid to do more work. Yeah! Huh? Now, if the thyroid's moving along nicely and it's making plenty of hormones, getting all the job done, whoa, right? There's no yeah going on, so TSH goes down.
Okay.
Now, if the thyroid is overproducing, TSH goes to zero. It just won't do anything. There's just none because there's no reason to stimulate the thyroid at all because thyroid is running free.
Yeah.
Right?
It's already overproducing.
It's already overproducing. People are in a hyperthyroid. Now, with hypothyroid, the thyroid's running slow and sluggish, so that guy's whipping like crazy. TSH levels go up. Now, another test that's helpful is the actual thyroid hormone. Here's where it gets a little tricky. Thyroid hormone is not one thing. It's more than one thing. There's two main hormones that we care about. There's T4 and there's T3. Now, T3 is the active hormone. It's the hormone that's actually doing the work. T4 has a slight amount of functionality to it, but T3 is 30 times more active. So if you really want to know what someone's thyroid's doing, you want to run that T3. Now, the problem with both these hormones is a lot of them are bound up with proteins when they're in your body, and they're ineffective. They're just kind of bound up with proteins, not doing anything. So the only effective hormone that's going to really mean something is the free form. So you need to run a free T3 and a free T4. Few doctors do this. I don't know why, because it's the best test to run. You run 3 tests. You run a TSH, a free T4, and a free T3. You want to see the free T4, even though it's not an active hormone, because the way our body gets T3 is they cut one of the iodines off of the T4 and turn it into T3. So T4 is the source of T3. So you want to see what both of them are, so you get a sense of how much hormone is going on in someone's body. Interesting.
Very interesting. So how would you be able to determine that their thyroid disease was causing their fatigue?
Well, all those little clues we've just said, they tend to run constipated, they're running cold, they're running slow, their brain's not working that well, and then those are all good, like I think it might be your thyroid. Now let's run the blood test and confirm my suspicion. If the blood test comes up positive, there it is. There's no question about it. If the blood test comes up where it's normal, then it's like, well, I wonder, maybe you're one of those subclinical hypothyroid people. Let's do a therapeutic trial, and we'll treat the thyroid and see if they get better. So that's how we do it.
Okay. What causes the thyroid to not produce correctly?
Yeah, good question. And it's not just one thing, it's lots of things. Now, your thyroid could just get sick, and you get what's known as thyroiditis. You could get a virus, or it could have whatever. It gets sick. And so the thyroid kind of doesn't do its job right, and so your numbers go down. That's rare. And normally when the thyroid gets sick, the cells start to break apart, and inside those cells is lots of hormone. So typically with thyroiditis, what people will get is hyperthyroid. One of the more common reasons this happens, but the thyroid doesn't work right, is because there's an autoimmune disease going on, and autoimmune diseases attack parts of our body. So there's an autoimmune disease known as Hashimoto's, and Hashimoto's is, the reason I'm hesitating here, because this is a bottomless pit of conversation. Let me just keep it simple. There is an autoimmune disease called Hashimoto's that causes this. We should do a show on Hashimoto's and all the reasons why, because otherwise I'll spend exactly the rest of the show talking about Hashimoto's. And then there's other cases where we don't know. It could be people are low of something that they need to make thyroid hormone. For example, I mentioned those iodines.
Yeah.
If you don't have enough iodine, you can't make the iodine. You can't make the thyroxine, the T4, or the triiodothyronine, which is the T3, because they need iodine.
Is there any genetic disposition toward having a sick or low or
There is.
high thyroid?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Now, it's not the main reason. It's not the most common thing that causes people to have low thyroid, but for sure, there's genetic problems that make you more predisposed to have thyroid problems.
And which age group do you primarily see this in? Does this happen in younger patients, or does it typically happen after menopause? Does it happen, in the middle of people's lives?
Yeah,
early
it's mostly in the
people's
middle
lives?
of people's lives. It could be as early as, it could be at any age, but in reality, in terms of who I ever see, I see no kids with this, not a single one. I know they exist, I've never seen one. Teenagers, that's when it starts showing up, again, rare. In their 20s, people in their 20s, more common. 30s and 40s, that's really, it's from basically the 20s to 40s that these people show up the most. It's
I
right
only
there.
asked just because I knew somebody personally around my age, 30, 32, and he had hypothyroidism. He had no eyebrows, so it's possible. I do believe that because
Yeah.
I've seen that. How do you fix it then? Where do you start to get their thyroid working?
That's an excellent question. Now, let me talk about what the standard is. The standard is you go to the doctor, they suspect you have thyroid disease, you get the test, they come out positive, and so what they do is they put you on hormone. The typical hormone they'll put you on is T4. Synthroid is the usual form of that. And for most people, what you'll do is you'll take the T4 in your body and you'll convert it into T3 and you'll be fine. Problem solved, we're good to go. Now, it's not the only thing to do, though. What you could do is you could supply the thyroid with the basic building blocks it needs to make thyroid hormone. You could stimulate the thyroid to make thyroid hormone. And I've done this lots of times, and I'd say about 35% of the time it'll work. And so what you could give them is tyrosine and iodine. And honestly, what really works better is just ground up thyroid gland. Because thyroid glands have all the stuff that thyroids need to be able to make thyroid hormone. And there's some herbs that are helpful with this. And a lot of times there's a formula that they'll just take all these things and just mix them together. And I have my patients take that. There's several on the market.
Sure.
Again, building blocks. You give people the basic building blocks. You just give it to them, and then you say good luck. And sometimes they'll just make thyroid hormone. They were just missing some ingredient in the formula, and broop, it comes on.
What does the tyrosine have? How does that impact?
It's what the thyroid hormone is made from.
Okay.
That's a building block. So it's an amino acid. It's literally
okay.
that is what other things are hooked to.
Sure.
And then broop, there you got thyroid hormone.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay.
It's the chassis.
Yes, got it. The connecting blocks of
Right,
the
then they put
Legos.
wheels on it and a
Okay.
steering wheel, and then it's good to go. You can drive it, right?
Good.
It's the chassis. So there's another part of this is if you can stimulate someone's need for a higher metabolism, it'll stimulate their thyroid.
So would that be like taking metabolizing boosting supplements? Would
No.
that be increasing their temperature?
Yes.
Okay.
That's how you know it worked if their temperature goes up. Now the question is, how do you increase their temperature? How do you ask their body to make more metabolism?
Would you make them dress warmer? Would you have them stay in warmer environments? Like I know with patients we do hydrotherapy and sometimes you order them to sleep in wool sweaters. Is that something that you would do?
Yeah, so let me show you with my hands. This is the temperature we want. This is the temperature they are. You'd think we want to get up here, so we're going to push them up. When you let go, this is you can put them in a hot tub.
Yeah.
And you cook them. Then you go, "Boo," they drop down lower.
Yeah.
Because of normal physiology. This is called homeostasis. Remember we did that intro show? Here it is. I told you it was going to come back, and it did.
And it's here.
Okay, now here they are, low temperature, and we want to get them up to here. What we do is we push it down,
So we cool them.
and they pop up.
Okay.
Isn't that interesting? We
Yeah.
push them down. It sounds crazy. They're too cold, and we're going to make them colder
Will you expose them to cold
Yes.
more frequently
and more deeply.
and deeply?
Not enough to freeze them.
No.
Freezing is not helpful.
We're not trying to cause hypothermia,
No,
but
no.
like in our practice when we do hydrotherapy, it's the warm towel for 5 minutes, the cold towel for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So we double the amount of cold exposure that we are providing hot exposure for.
Yeah, we want to kind of shock them. If you can put cold on hard and fast and shock your system, your body will fight against the shock. So an easy way to do this at home is to simply take a shower and then turn the water to cold and then just let it hit you. In particular, you want to let it hit this part of your back because there's a little fat pad back there made of brown fat. Right. And brown fat is the fat that your body uses to burn calories. It's a heating pad. And if you could do this, I've actually been out, because we live in Alaska, so it's easy to get cold exposure. You walk outside and walk around, right?
Yeah.
So I've been walking around with a light jacket when it was cold and no gloves, no hat. My body was sending me signals, you're going to die, because I felt super cold. But I kept marching vigorously, generating heat on the inside of me. And after about 7 minutes of thinking I was going to die in the cold, my body kicked on. The motor inside kicked on, and heat started pouring out of my shoulders, down my arms. Within about 5 minutes, my hands were warm.
Okay.
And during that same vigorous hike, I crossed the road and felt some kind of ice hit my ear, which was exposed to the air. I don't know, it was about 10 above at that point. And so I kind of, I wonder if my ear's getting a problem. And what it was sweat.
Okay.
Coming down off my scalp and freezing on my ears. So I just wiped the sweat off and I was fine.
So typically, how long do you put patients on this protocol of hot and cold therapy to then raise their body temperature?
About a month.
Okay.
And then we'll know. Now, it doesn't always work. Sometimes people are broken enough that you cannot feed their thyroid and stimulate it to get enough juice out of it because they've had this disease or a broken thyroid for, decades. If somebody's coming to me and they've had hypothyroidism for a year, the chance of them recovering is very high. That we usually turn around. It's easy. Let me just say that. But if somebody's come to me and they've had 15 years of hypothyroidism, and they've been on Thyroid or some kind of, hormone replacement, the chances of getting them to turn is low.
Is there any chance that you do go through the hydrotherapy and then it increases their temperature, but their thyroid still isn't performing at normal level?
No.
Okay.
You can't get your temperature to go up unless your thyroid performs normal.
Okay, so
it's a requirement.
One from the other.
Yeah. So there you are. So now there's other things you could do. Let me say, because we're doing this show for people so that they get informed about options. An option that's almost never given is this: can we just fix it? Yeah, by doing what I just said. Give folks the stuff they need to make the hormone.
The building blocks.
The building blocks, yes. And then stimulate it.
Okay.
So you put it into the beaker and you give it a shake, right? Yeah, the beaker is you.
Yeah.
And the shake is exposure to cold. And then there it is. Ha-ha, we're fixed. Now, if it doesn't work, there's other options than the Synthroid. Synthroid's lovely, it's fine, except for when it doesn't work. Here's the thing. There's lots of ways your thyroid can break down. One of the ways it can break down is the conversion of T4 into T3. Remember, you got to cut one of the iodines off. You got T3 now, and some people don't cut the right iodine off. They cut the wrong one off.
Oh.
And so it won't do its work. Now, what do you mean it cuts the wrong one off? No. This sounds horrible. This isn't. This is a superpower. Some people, if you give them enough stress, their bodies slow down. It's a survival mechanism. If you can slow your metabolism down, then you don't need to eat as much, and you can make it through the famine or the war or the whatever is going on. And back in the old days, there was a lot of that going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So they survived and passed down those genetics.
Yeah, thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of people died of starvation, and so the ones that survived, just through random chance, had this mutation that allowed them to cut the wrong iodine off and get a slower metabolism. Not enough to kill you, but enough to slow you down. Like the Donner Party, when you got stuck in the snow and had to eat each other, and lots of them died. Well, the ones that could survive on less were the ones that survived. The ones that had high metabolisms, they couldn't survive. They were taken out. Now, we didn't have the testing back then to see who these people were and whether they had this trick, but it's likely that the ones that survived did have this trick. And when you look at populations in the world right now, the populations that historically have had died of starvation or been in famine, let's call it that way, they have had lots of famine. You think of like the Irish and their potato famine. Northern Europeans in general were having famines with fair regularity. American Indians, they got famine routinely because you couldn't find enough food. You look at those populations, then those populations have this ability to slow their metabolism down. Contrary to that, or in opposition to that, is you look at people who grew up in Africa or in tropical countries. So there's always something to eat. There's fruit on the trees or something. So those people don't have this ability. And so they can't pull this trick out. Now, if you go through a stressful time, let's say you're a student and you're studying real hard and you're taking tests, that's enough stress to do it. Mm-hmm. Or you got a new job and you're really struggling, that's enough stress to do it. Those people, that latent ability to slow their metabolism clicks on and boop, they go down. Their testing comes out normal, but they are actually hypothyroidism. Their temperature's cold, they have all the symptoms of it, and what they're doing is they're having a breakdown in the conversion of T4 into T3. They're cutting the wrong iodine off. They're making what's known as reverse T3, and there's a test for this.
Good.
You can actually check and see if somebody's got this. And then there's a treatment for fixing this, which is going to take 20 minutes for me to explain to you. Let me just say, keep it simple. There's a treatment for it, and it works. It's fabulous. I've done it lots of times. It's lovely to be able to get this thing to turn. Okay.
I have a question, though.
Go ahead.
Are there any inflammatory markers that you assess in determining whether or not they have?
Well, now we're getting into the Hashimoto story.
Okay.
If we go to in Hashimoto's, it's an autoimmune disease, so we're checking for autoimmunity. And what we want to do with that one is we want to find, first of all, do they have the antibody that's associated with the autoimmunity? There's a couple of them. There's one that's thyroid peroxidase, TPO, and there's another one, antithyroglobulin antibody. Those two together are pretty dang good markers for Hashimoto's. But the main thing about Hashimoto's is you got to heal their digestive system, because that's what's driving the whole autoimmune thing, is digestive breakdown. Very interesting subject, interesting process. I hope I piqued someone's interest who's watching, and then will stick with us, because at some point we're going to talk about what that is.
Revisit that topic, definitely. What are some of the other autoimmune issues that do affect thyroid?
Well, I don't want to say autoimmune issues. I'd say kind of general issues. If your body's really falling apart and you have some kind of disease, for example, I mean, we told you people have the ability to slow their metabolism based on stress. But stress is not just you studying for tests. Stress could be, I had pneumonia and I almost died, or I've been in the hospital and they did an operation. That's stressful.
Yeah.
Even though it's not mental stress, it's physical stress.
About like a bout of antibiotics.
Something like that. Or I was, building a treehouse and fell out of it. Mm-hmm. Like that. That'll do it too. Stuff like that. Those shocks to your system where you get an accident or an injury, sometimes that'll trigger it.
Wow. Very interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. So once you figure out it's thyroid disease that is contributing to their fatigue, I know you mentioned we treat it with hydrotherapy, we treat it with supplements. What are other forms of treatment?
So you can take, they're not supplements exactly, they're prescription treatments, but they're a mix of T4 and T3. They're probably the best way to go. The easiest, cheapest thing to do is just to take T4 that's manufactured and just have it converted into T3. But if you get a natural source of T3 and T4, then you can compensate for the poor conversion of T4 into T3. Let me be more, I'm using too many words. Let me just say what it is. It's called Armour Thyroid.
Okay.
That's not the only one there is.
Or like Thyroid 130 or Thyroid 96, like those ground thyroid supplements?
Yeah, so what those are is that basically they're ground up thyroid gland that's been assayed for how much hormone it has in it, and they contain not only the hormone but all the other
building blocks.
Yes. So it's a more clever way to fix the problem, because remember, our thyroids have the ability to make their own hormone if you just give them the stuff. And so if you make it easy on them and you give them the stuff, and by the way, you throw in a little hormone here, then you get a better result. So lots of people who don't do well on T4 alone do beautifully on T4 and T3 together.
Okay.
That's worth the price of admission to this whole little conversation. That gem right there. If people listening and they're hypothyroid and they're on the stuff and they don't feel good and they think, what the heck? And then your doctor said, well, let's go ahead and raise the dose. And you raise the dose, you felt a little bit better, but then later you felt worse. And you're going, I don't know what's wrong. So it's weird. I think it's my thyroid, but it's not. Chances are you got a conversion problem. That's the classic picture right there. It worked at first and it quit working. I increased it, it worked a little bit, and then it quit working even more. That's a conversion problem. So if you can take something that's got the T4 and the T3 at the same time and stimulate your own thyroid's production of thyroid hormone because it's got all the building blocks in it, you're getting 2 for 1 on that. So Armour Thyroid is particularly effective at treating thyroid problems, but it's not just, low thyroid, but it's not just Armour Thyroid. There's several companies that do this. There's one called Thyroid, and there's one called Thyroid. Now, you wouldn't think there would be any difference between these because they're all made from animal thyroid glands. You know, we don't eat the thyroid, so they can collect them, grind them up, put them into capsules, right? Except there are differences in these various companies. I've had people who could take Thyroid and they did beautifully. They took Armour and they fell apart. Or they took Thyroid, they did beautifully, and they took Thyroid and they fell apart.
I wonder if it's the difference in sourcing, if the one is
good question.
thyroid or the other is cow thyroid or chicken.
Something like that. Clearly there's a difference here. Most of these are made from pig thyroids.
Okay.
But they're not always necessarily. So that could be what it is. I'm sure if I looked into it enough that we could figure it out. But the fact of the matter is you just switch brands and then we can figure it out. Because there's no test. It's always going to be us trying something, see if it works. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, trying something else. So some of what medicine does is by its own nature is empirical, because it has to be. Because we don't know everything about everybody in every way. I mean, come on, our human bodies are more complicated than the space shuttle.
Absolutely.
Who knows what's really going on? You make your best guess, and then you try stuff, and then you say, how do you feel?
Sure. So after you make your best guess, after you get lab results, after you've given supplements and it is showing positive effect, you can see by their sleep markers, their temperature markers. What other markers can you tell that other than running labs again?
The running labs is helpful. The more it's more helpful is just asking, how do you feel? And then people say, I feel better.
Okay.
My energy's up. I'm getting more done. It's like amazing. I feel way better.
How long does that last before you think that you've resolved their case?
So some people, a lot of times people come to me, and let's be practical about this. They come to me and say, I don't want to be on Thyroid. I hate Thyroid. I don't like the way I feel. This isn't working. You're, a naturopathic doctor. Is there an alternative? And the answer is, yeah, there's an alternative. I don't know if it's going to work. Really, when you get down to, if you don't want to take Thyroid at all, you don't want to take anything, what's the chances I can turn you? If you're early in your case, good. If you're late in your case, bad. And it has to do, I think it's common sense. You think your thyroid, is it, just injured, bruised, if you will, okay? And we could just fluff it and, give it a good pep talk and let it go on. Or if it's actually scarred and old, and there's no hardly any thyroid left to it.
And then at
those
that
people,
point,
we can't get that to go back.
Do we recommend that they go through a surgery to remove thyroid?
No, you don't have to remove it. It turns out to be perfectly happy. You can have scar tissue in your body and it doesn't hurt anything. It just doesn't work.
Okay.
I mean, it works as scar tissue. It just doesn't do anything functional. And it's an easy solution, really. Just you have to take hormone for the rest of your life. Is it millions of people do this? I think.
Yeah.
It's got to be. I haven't actually looked at that number, how many people are on some sort of thyroid thing, but it's a lot of people. And so it's a common problem. In fact, it's so common that most doctors don't even bother with any of the things that we just talked about. All they do is they run the test, see if you have it, they put you on Thyroid and call it good. And if it doesn't work, well...
What are some of the symptoms and side effects of Thyroid?
Well, Thyroid, if you overdose it, you'll get hyperthyroidism. That's not common. That's usually not what people complain about. Mostly what it is, they take it and they still feel tired.
Okay.
And it doesn't get them the energy. They remember being better, and so they have this sense of I'm searching for something better, and so they're thinking maybe this is part of it. And sometimes it is. They really do have a problem. Thyroid turns out to not be a good thing. Now, I don't want to bad talk Thyroid too much. Thyroid's cheap. It's easily available. It fixes most people. Lots of people take Thyroid, and they work perfectly well. There's nothing to fix. That's great. But I do want to mention for other people who are in that position, the minority, who this doesn't work great for, what else can be done? A bunch of stuff.
Wonderful. Well, we have about a minute left. Do you want to summarize everything that we've just discussed?
Let me talk about the fatigue thing. So for most people who come in to see me and they say, I'm fatigued, they say, can you check my thyroid? Because we know this. The thyroid sets your basic metabolic rate. If your thyroid's running low, your metabolism is going to be low, and you're going to have low temperature, low energy, just everything's going to be running low and slow. This is a common problem, but it is really not the most common cause of fatigue. So we'll touch upon some of those other ones, but really this is not like the top one here.
Okay.
It's common, but not, not everybody by any means. Not even most people. Most people don't have this as the reason why they're tired. Now I'm tempted to start the whole next show
right over again, but we'll have time next time.
All right.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Luper.
You're very welcome.
We'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Sensible Health Solutions. We hope you found today's discussion enlightening and packed with practical tips to enhance your wellness journey. Remember, small changes can lead to big results. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us bring you the best content possible. Stay connected with us on social media for more health insights and updates. You can find us at Sensible Health Solutions across all social platforms. Until next time, stay sensible and stay healthy. This content is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Seek medical advice from a healthcare professional for any medical conditions.